You haven't been giving me a hard time then.
Evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, November 29th. We're Manhattan Community Board 11, Second Avenue Subway Task Force. My name is Xavier Santiago. I'm chair of this task force. Meeting is called to order at 6:39 p.m. Tonight we're joined by our Assistant District Manager, Lee Nixon. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. One, no one may speak to the ground the floor. Two, CB11 members, if you have a question or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. You should not engage in back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. Meetings attending via Zoom, you can find the raise hand button by first clicking the participant's icon to access the panel where the button is located. If you have any technical issues, please relay your difficulty to the staff in the chat. Chat should not be used to discuss or pose questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record. Please keep your questions and comments brief and on topic of the discussion. We will now call the roll.
I
have it right here. All right, Jose Altamirano.
Present.
Leslie Colon.
Present.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
David Giordano is excused. Giselle Malave is excused. Jennifer Meyer is excused. Nelson Rama.
Present.
Beverly Pavon.
Present.
Claudia Perez. Xavier Santiago present. Candy Vives Vasquez. We have four. Okay, the agenda, the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office. It was posted on the website's meetings calendar. If there are no objections, the agenda as stated. Board members, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes were distributed right after the last meeting. If there are no objections, the last meeting's minutes will get up. Please raise your hand if you wish to make that. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the last board meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the website if they are not already. Okay, we're going to jump into the agenda. Just 2 moments for me. Appreciate everyone being here on time. We have Joe O'Donnell, who has joined us from the MTA, just to go over some of our bits and bobs. So there are no announcements or informational updates in that regard, but addressing, we still have our station stops and the project funding, getting updates on that, and then what's going on with the negotiations with the Board of Franklin Plaza. So Joe, are you with us?
I am, Xavier. How are you? How's everybody?
Well, I was at an event this afternoon. I was freezing, so I'm doing all right, and we're all here.
I think it's slightly warmer today. I know I was bringing out the trash last night in my shorts and t-shirt and like immediately froze upon getting to the curb.
A wise choice. So talk to us, I guess we can lump 1 and 2 together, the station stops and project funding. And it was good seeing you, the announcement with the Secretary of Transportation. So you want to give us a quick update on the project funding, and then we can go into the station stops and then go on to what's going on with the Franklin Plaza.
Sure. So, I mean, great news in that one of the reasons things have been at such a snail's pace up until this point is we have identified our local funding. We've always had, X amount of dollars in our pocket, if you will, already from previous capital plans leading up to this point that allowed us to advance design, preliminary engineering, start our property acquisition. But we were reluctant to get going full steam ahead on phase 2 because we didn't want to find ourselves in a position much like they did in the 1970s, where they didn't have enough money. They started digging tunnels and couldn't finish the project and had to tuck tail and leave. So we've been cognizant of that. We also don't want, this project is not going to be without its disruptions. It's a large project over a large area, and we don't want to start in on that and create disruptions for folks only to have to not be able to complete the project. So as you know, you were there in the beginning of November, the 4th, I believe it was. The FTA announced that they were committing a fully funded grant agreement, which is the federal share of over $3 billion, the second half of the money, if you will, to to Second Avenue subway. So that gives us confidence we're going to have the funding to complete the project and to move forward with, more expeditiously.
All right, good. So when would you say I know we're a little ways off, but when would you hope that we'd be able to begin construction?
Construction itself is a little ways off. Work, we already have a contract out on the street for early utility work, and that's going to lead us into bullet number 3 here. So we put out in the summer a contract procurement for our early utility work. One of the lessons learned from phase 1 was that part of the biggest schedule impacts was getting into the ground and then finding out that despite our best coordination with our sister agencies, DEP, DOT, Con Edison, Verizon, etc., the drawings that we received from those agencies were either outdated, sometimes 100 years old, because we were doing work in areas that they didn't have any belief that work had been done, or documents just weren't updated. So a lot of curveballs once we got into the ground. We're trying to prevent that this time. And before we get going on the actual project, the first thing we're going to do is move the utilities out of the way so that we don't have those problems we experienced in phase 1. Much like a surgeon who's going in to work on your heart, he's got to get the ribs out of the way, right, to get in to see your heart. So we're going to get all of those guts, the city's guts, out of the way so that when it comes time to do the heavy construction, the heavy civil, we don't have those curveballs. So that contract's on the street. We were hopeful we were going to have it awarded by the end of this month, but we are committed to getting that awarded by the end of this year, and that'll allow us to mobilize and start doing some work that folks are going to see and really be able to associate with Second Avenue subway in probably end of Q1 next year.
Okay, so construction toward the end of Q1. Okay,
Yeah.
With the electrical and utility.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and then when would you proceed to civil work beginning?
So then, once we get that contract 1 awarded, we would put the subsequent contracts 2 and 3 out on the street with hopes of awarding them at least contract 2 by middle of next year. That is a design build contract. So that means we are going to contract a design build team to come in and take what it'll be approximately a 30% design that we'll take the project to. And then they're going to come in and do confirmation of our existing design and then take the design the rest of the way. So you probably won't see heavy civil construction much before the end of 2024 or the beginning of 2025. It usually takes about 6 months for them to get their sea legs under them, confirm our design, and they get going on their own work. This utility contract that I mentioned that's already on the street, and then we expect to get going early Q1 early next year. That's a design bid build contract. So we've already designed it almost 100%, 90 something percent. So they are going to come in and bid on the work that we already know we need to do, so they can get going a lot quicker.
Okay. Okay, board members, do you have any questions before we transition to the station stop specific? Yes, Jessica.
Is the RFP number 3 the finalization of the work from the contract number 2 design build to the 30% design?
Yeah, so contract 1 will be the utility work. Contract 2 will be the tunnel boring machine and the entrance and ancillary structures. Contract 3 will be the heavy civil, the mining and the build out of 116th Street Station. And then the contract 4 is going to tie it all together with the systems and the commissioning. So there's 4 contracts anticipated as part of this phase of the project. Again, another lesson learned from phase 1, where we had significantly more contracts, and there are a lot of issues with the handovers and the previous contracts being delayed for whatever reason, which then subsequently impacts the follow-on contract. So we've tried to eliminate, that issue by, packaging these so that there's not as many, contracts that need to integrate with one another.
Okay, could you tell, what was contract for again? I'm just taking notes for the minutes.
That is the systems and commissioning. So once everything is sort of in place, they'll do all the testing and commissioning of the track, the power, the signals, the communications, and then ultimately commission these things as safe and operable.
Copy that. Any other questions? Okay, next we'll move to station stops. With that and the design of it, so we have from phase 1, 96th Street has its secondary exit at 94. Tell us where, remind us, in the task force, where will the primary entrance be? Obviously 116th, 106, 125th, and where will the secondary entrances?
Or if it's helpful, and I don't know if I have the ability to, I can share some graphics that'll depict that if that's helpful. And then obviously I can send that to you after the fact so you have it and if you want to post it on the site.
Yep.
Let's see.
You should be able to share now. Go ahead, Joseph.
Okay. Oh, share screen. Sorry, I couldn't find it for a second. It's right down there at the bottom. All right, can you all see that?
Yes. Go ahead.
All right, so the beginning of this is a lot that you already know, that there will be 3 new stations. 106th, that's going to be new cut and cover station. So that work is a little bit more intensive. That's more like the work that the construction means and methods that folks were used to at 96th Street. This is primarily because of the elevation of the station here, and also the need to connect into the existing infrastructure. So we have tail tracks that extend from the existing 96th Street station, which is the terminus of phase 1. Tail tracks extend up to 103rd Street, 104th, and that is to lay trains up or to put a train there if it is, disabled and we need to get it out of the way. So we're going to be able to utilize those tail tracks to extend from 96th Street up to 105th Street, where we'll pick up work and, then build out the 106th Street station. That'll be cut and cover. 160th Street station, I think, don't know how many of you, I believe, Xavier, you've been down there to the 116th Street tunnels with us in the past. That is where they built those 1970s era tunnels. It's a great starter hole for us.
I haven't been down in the tunnels.
I thought you were down there when we went down with Espy a year or so ago, but we'll have to get you guys down there then.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So the neat thing about that is when they built it in the 1970s, they built it with 2 running tunnels, and then there's a center maintenance track. Back in the day, if there was a train that needed to be serviced or if it was impacted, they would simply take it off the 2 running tracks and move it into the center track. We're going to be able to utilize the width of those 2 running tunnels and the maintenance track to put a center platform in there and then build the station out from there. So not as much disruption at the street level with 116th Street station because of the fact that it's going to be built from inside out. Similarly, 125th Street, we're going to drop the tunnel boring machine in on 2nd Avenue, just north of 120th Street. There's a vacant lot there now, which we've purchased. So between that vacant lot and some area in the street, we'll excavate a launch box and we'll send the tunnel boring machine on its way north and then eventually west to Lenox Ave. And that we are doing, we over the last couple of years, we really tweaked the design so that the 125th Street station is going to be all tunnel boring and mined excavation. So from the ground or the bottom up, so that there's minimal disruption to the vibrant 125th Street corridor. The only real construction you're going to see on 125th Street will be when we build out those stations and entrances and ancillaries. And that kind of construction is going to be more like you see with development projects going on all over the city, not that cut and cover. So the most disruptive portion of this work will be in that 106th Street station area. I apologize.
Okay, so 106 is the more challenging aspect of it.
Correct. Yeah, because we have to do that all from the top down. So this is just, this is a drawing I believe you all seen before. This sort of lays everything out, where we're connecting to the existing tunnels in green south of 106th Street, then the 116th Street station. Then again, those 1970s era existing tunnels from approximately 110 to 120, where we'll build out the 116th Street station. And then just north of that, we'll drop the tunnel boring machine, and there'll be two running tunnels, one for the northbound and one for the southbound. That'll be mined by the tunnel boring machine. So we're going to send it on its way, and it'll run north and then turn west at about 124th Street before it connects to 125th Street. It'll run all the way to Lenox Avenue. We'll take it out of the ground, bring it back to 120th, drop it in again, and let it bore the second tunnel, for the if we do the southbound first, this will be for the northbound or vice versa. This explains, a little bit more graphically what I was talking about, where 106th Street tunnel will be, or the station will be cut and cover construction, modification of the existing tunnel work at 116th Street station, and then the 125th Street station will be all newly constructed using a tunnel boring machine and mined from underground.
Okay.
Talked a little bit about this already, where we are, one contract already on the street, which was released in June, got our fully funded grant agreement in 2023. We expect to award that first contract by the end of this year, with work to begin in early 24, likely around the end of Q1. And then currently the project is still in the design phase, with utility work to begin in early 24. This is just a bit of a collage from that event that we had up at 125th Street. That 125th Street location, which you see in the center top there with Senator Schumer, and then you can see Xavier in the background in the second row there with all the dignitaries. That was at the site of our future entrance location. The secondary entrance location will probably wind up being the primary location, because it's going to be have 5 elevators, I believe. I got to double check the number, but it's a full complement of a full elevator bank here. And this is going to be the one most proximate to the Metro North station. The other one at Lexington Avenue will allow you, both will allow you to connect, but to the 456, but the Lexington Avenue one will be right below the existing 456, and you'll be able to just go upstairs to it. Here you'll have to take a passageway. On the lower left-hand side, you can see prior to that event on Saturday morning, that Friday afternoon prior to that event, we actually toured the governor and the transportation secretary down in those 70s era tunnels. And that's Jano on the right in the all yellow jacket. And just behind the transportation secretary and the governor is Jamie Torres Springer, the president of construction and development. So these are some architectural renderings of phase 1. On the left-hand side, you see a 2007 architectural rendering. And on the right-hand side, you see an actual picture from opening day of the 72nd Street station. And I have a couple of these, different ones to show you street level renderings versus mezzanine or platform renderings. The only reason I wanted to show you these is, despite the fact that we haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet, based on, our best thinking and the design that's been achieved to date, we're able to share that with the artists, and they're able to put together a rendering. And then if you look on the left-hand side, that is a drawing. On the right-hand side is a picture of the actual finished product. So they get it pretty close. So when I get to show you what the renderings are like for the respective 106, 116, and 125th Street station, it's with the confidence that, color of tile, color of brick, brightness of lighting, things like that may change, but the overall look and feel is going to be pretty close. They get it pretty close, the artists. So this is the elevator entrance at 72nd Street. On the left-hand side was the rendering. On the right-hand side is the current street view. It's 96th Street on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, an actual picture in 2017 after service was opened. So now to this phase, second phase. This is the 106th Street station. So if you see, all of these stations are going to be similarly configured with ancillaries at the terminus. Those ancillary structures are used much like the grading is in the older system. Those vents that you see and folks get heels caught into, and we have a big problem with old grading in East Harlem and Central Harlem with the sidewalk heaving. And we always get calls, from folks with regard to trip hazards related to those metal grates because water gets in there. And then when they freeze, the concrete buckles and they heave, and it's a problem. So we're not going to be using grading as part of the phase 2. There may be some existing grading, from those 70s era tunnels or from the existing system around 125th Street that we leave in place. But a lot of that is going to be and we're going to use the ancillary structures to push and pull air into and out of the station. It also gives us greater confidence and safety if there's a smoke condition in the station, that we know we can add fresh air more quickly, or we can pull smoke out of the system if we need to. So those are going to be at the ends, the bookends of the stations, north and south for 106 and 116, and east and west for 125th Street. Similarly, all of the stations are going to have 2 entrances. All of the stations will have ADA accessibility, so there will be elevators and escalators as part of all the stations, as well as stairs. So right now we anticipate, or the proposed entrances are at 106th Street on the northeast corner of 106th and 2nd Avenue. And that is in there. There's a small plaza area in front of Franklin Plaza buildings. So we anticipate enlarging that plaza, not only to accommodate our entrance, but to create more of a sitting area and more of a public plaza area for that corner. There will be a secondary or smaller entrance at 108th Street, and that is on the back corner of an existing Franklin Plaza parking lot. So there, I believe it's 6 spots, but I'd have to double check, that are going to be impacted. So we're working with Franklin Plaza to find locations on their property to relocate those lost parking spots for the Franklin Plaza folks. I know I mentioned that the previous discussion was going to lead into that third bullet in the coordination with Franklin Plaza. So there's 2 sort of distinct touch points with Franklin Plaza. Right now, as we advance this discussion about contract 1 and that early utility work, we're going to have to talk with Franklin Plaza, and we've got discussions underway with their legal counsel relative to any potential tree impacts. They've got some significant trees there, some mature trees, which are, large caliper trees. We don't anticipate needing to remove any of those trees, and we are going to do our best to make sure that our contractors and their arborists, they're going to be required to have an arborist maintain the vitality of those trees as they do their work. So there's going to be tree protections in place, both at the surface and at the root level. But if the eventuality should come to pass that the tree is impacted negatively and it's a result of our work, then we're going to have to work out now with Franklin Plaza what it looks like in the event that a tree should fail to thrive and we need to replace that tree for Franklin Plaza. So that's that first level of discussion that's going on around contract 1. And then as we get into contracts 2 and eventually 3 and 4 further down the road, we're going to have discussions about that entrance location, both primarily the one at 108th Street, because it's literally on their property and impacting a handful of parking spots, but also the one at 106th Street, because, we're going to need to take care there when we build that entrance out, to minimize impacts on those surrounding buildings. So that's going to require negotiations and agreements for monitoring equipment, not only for noise, but for vibration and any settlement or tilt or anything of that nature as a result of our work. So we're going to work with them and their legal team to make sure that all those protections are in place. So again, here's a rendering of what that we anticipate that entrance looking like at 106th Street. On the left-hand side, you see escalators. On the right-hand side, staircases, and you can't really see, but in the back, there would be there's an elevator. So this is, again, conceptual rendering subject to change, but you can also see that we've, expanded the footprint of this public plaza here, not only for pedestrians to navigate around our entryway, but also to replace that seating area and things along the building line here to the right that you can see in this rendering. Sorry, did somebody have a question? I thought I heard something.
Yeah, we'll hold questions until you finish the
Okay.
presentation.
Cool. And then here's 116. Again, with the ancillaries to the north and south. Little distinction here. The ancillary here and the north ancillary or ancillary 2 will be on the east side of the street. And that was done intentionally again to minimize disruption. On the right-hand side of the street, you've got NYCHA properties and a church that we're looking to avoid negative impacts on. So we've moved the ancillary. Originally, the ancillary was on the east side of the street. Now it's going to be on the west side of the street. I don't think that's a new wrinkle. I think we've been talking about that for quite some time. But again, just to point out how we're trying to do our best to make sure that we're minimizing impacts on the surrounding community. With regard to the renderings at this location, this is the mezzanine level. So you see in the middle there the elevator, which will take you from the street down to a main mezzanine, and then you'll be able to take elevators down to the respective platform, whether you're going to the downtown elevator or to the downtown train or the uptown train. Because it's a center platform, you'll be able to get to either side from that elevator. This is a platform level look. So you see where we've built this center platform out now. On the two extremes, you see the running tunnels. The one on the right-hand side, you actually see the train. On the left-hand side, there is no train. But the existence of that maintenance track from the 1970s allows us to build out this platform. So we're going to take that down. We're going to take down the existing, concrete that's there down to the track level, and then build that up to the platform height as we move forward in the existing tunnel work. 125th Street, there's going to be ancillaries at Park Avenue and 125th Street and Lexington Avenue and 125th Street. These ancillary structures are actually closer to 124th on those respective blocks on Park and Lexington. And that's because our stations are going to be, the entrances are going to be on the 125th Street side. So entrance 3 is on the Park Avenue side. That's going to be primarily an elevator entrance, but it's also going to have stairs and escalators that'll allow you to connect to the existing 456. You'll then take a tunnel that you'll be able to walk to the 456. That is in the lot that we did the event in. The primary lot, closer to 125th Street, that was Durst property, which we acquired from the Durst folks. There's a center property there. It was broken down into 3 parcels, the one closest to 125th Street, the one closest to 124th Street, and then a center parcel, which was HPD, which we acquired from the city as part of a land use swap. They gave us that in exchange for some previous land considerations from the MTA. And then you have at 125th and Lex, you have your connection to the existing 456. Now that entrance is going to be on the southeast corner of 125th and Lex, and that's going to be where the existing Extel property or development site is. We've acquired a box. As Extel looks to develop their site, we've acquired an easement inside their property where they're going to build us a box so that when we get there, if we're there after they're already developing, that box has been preserved that allows us to build our station entrance. And that's going to connect you seamlessly to the 456. We have the most complete set of renderings for this station. So if you see, or this station entrance, if you see here, this is 125th and Park. This is an elevated view. You can see the viaduct on the right-hand side. It's a much more significant entrance at the street level. I know we heard a lot from folks about, especially like the Uptown Grand Central folks, about having an entrance befitting this area and this new service that's going to be brought here. So this is that more that marquee entrance. That will be sort of the signature entrance here at 125th Street. It will have elevators, as I mentioned. It'll also have, all of the stations will have public art. But if you can see in the left-hand corner here, you can see some, a rendering. That's not the art that's anticipated. We haven't even gotten that far yet to know what the final products would be like here. But that is the, a conceptual rendering of what the art would look like. Here's a street level view. Again, showing you the elevators in the left-hand side and the turnstiles. This sort of glass atrium area here, or what looks almost like an aquarium of sorts, or a terrarium. That's air handling. That's going to allow us to bring air into and out of the station. So that'll go all the way up through and all the way down to the platform level. So that's, again, another way to adaptively reuse that space to get air in and out of the station. There's a better look, or a closer look at that location. On the right-hand side now are the elevators. A lot of natural light being brought into the station here. And then here is the platform level of the uptown and downtown trades. I don't really need to go in. This is more stuff that we use. It's just, it'll be in the deck just to talk about the way we're communicating the project to folks, who we're speaking with and how we're speaking with them. And then obviously, the outreach team and what they've been doing. And our two major or key points of contact are Hector Santana and Alex Zamudio, but we do have three other folks that are part of this team. So a pretty full team that's been out there since 2017. In anticipation of us being a lot further along in the project than we already are. We thought we would be in construction already, but waiting for this federal funding, which was, certainly impacted by COVID as well. But now we're here and we're anticipating moving a lot more quickly. So I don't know, Xavier, if you want me to stop sharing so that we can have a discussion, or if it's helpful to leave this up to be able to go back to things, you let me know, and I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, leave it up, and thank you for the kind of overview. I think one of the questions I would have is, on the queue line from phase one, it seemed you had the secondary entrances south of the primary, like 96 and then 94 and so on. So why was there a shift in going a northern approach?
I don't know that it was a concerted decision. I think it was based on the property needed to acquire, and again, trying to be minimally impactful. So for 106th Street, you've already got that sort of natural footprint in the plaza there. If we built a larger sort of showpiece entrance for 106 at the 108th Street side of the station, well, then we would be taking that much more space from Franklin Plaza and impacting that much more parking. But I can ask our design team if there was a reason north-south other than, minimizing impacts.
Well, yeah, I guess with 206 having the primary entrance, why wasn't there an assessment of going to 104th Street or 105th for the secondary? To clarify my question.
Yeah, 104th, 105th, right there on 102nd Avenue. I know you've got a school, you've got Gaylord White. So again, needing to acquire property to put these things in. I don't want to speculate, but it's just me spitballing right now. So I guess technically I am speculating, but I don't want to speak out of school. So let me double check with the design team as to see, what the motivation was there.
Okay. Committee members, do you have anything to suggest?
You may have talked about this previously, and thank you for your presentation and update. Just curious if there are any public restrooms planned in any of the stations?
Oh, great question.
That is a great question. I'm trying to recall because I don't want to confuse projects. I believe there's public restrooms beyond the turnstiles, so not in the non-paid area, but I believe they are in the paid area, but I'll confirm.
Thank you.
Yes, Leslie.
Hi, my name is Leslie Colon. I am a resident and board member of Franklin Plaza.
Hey, Leslie, how are you?
Great. Presentation is fabulous. I'm dying to see this train station come to fruition since I've always had to walk to Lexington Avenue. However, my serious concern is the exit on 108th Street. I live in that building right there, and we have spoken with MTA over 20 years ago to have a train station exit there. It was an empty space many years ago. We have acquired a gas treatment plant there with a boiler system there, and it's above ground. My concern is, we just had a boiler main break last week, right after Thanksgiving. We had 2 days without hot water in that building. Now, with all this construction that you're claiming to do on that property, taking away the residential parking, what is to say with all that vibration if you're not gonna break my boiler? Now,
Right,
we've
right.
had, hold on, we've also had a gas leak in this neighborhood. As a matter of fact, a block away from this location, that people were saying there was a strong smell of gas and we had an explosion 9 years ago. What is to say that your construction will not tap into my gas line and level my building?
Right. Well, so, great points. And we've had protracted discussions with Franklin Plaza. As I mentioned, I know prior to 2022, our folks definitely were in coordination with Franklin Plaza, and the gentleman's name escapes me at the moment, but he's the facilities manager there. And they've toured that that new gas plant that's been put in there. They've toured the parking area to try to discuss, alternate parking locations. So there's been a lot of discussion and coordination. I don't think there's been any resolution, but those conversations are ongoing. And one of the reasons, again, why we're doing that utility work early is to make sure that when they come in to do the heavy construction, because when we get into the ground, chances are there's going to be Con Edison, DEP, they're going to ask us to upgrade their existing systems when we get in there, because they're going to say, we already got the ground open. We've had an issue here in the past, or this is an antiquated system that's beyond its useful life. No sense in taking, what is a deteriorated system and then just moving it to the right and covering up and living with it. We're going to wind up, in a lot of instances, upgrading this infrastructure on behalf of these agencies, or they're going to come in and do the work for themselves while we've got the ground open. So there is a lot of care and detail that goes into this and consideration for these sort of things. So we'll certainly be working hand in hand with all of these agencies as we do that, to make sure that, again, and there's no, hopefully no accidental impacts. And if we have to do, as I say, if we're taking a gas main and moving it from the center of the street to the sidewalk area, there may need to be cutovers, but those will be planned and coordinated. And if there's any temporary outages, again, those will be coordinated not only with the agency having jurisdiction or the owner, but also with any buildings or properties that could potentially be impacted. So we're going to have a lot of dialogue with Franklin Plaza, a lot of ongoing dialogue, not only for the early utility work, but then again for those future entrance constructions.
Yeah.
Another follow-up
Yeah,
question.
we also had requested environmental testing, because we noticed these buildings were built in 1961. There is a lot of asbestos there. I have a lot of elderly people. I have a lot of young handicapped kids that live in the complex that are wheelchair bound. And with all this respiratory and RSV and COVID going on, what is to say that all this construction is going to affect their quality of life and the environment?
Right. So two things on that front. We are going to have, obviously, we're going to have air monitoring as part of the project. So anything the project is doing to stir up, not only are they going to have a dust mitigation plan, so they're not, sending up a ton of dust and particulate, but if they do, or if there is stuff that escapes their mitigation measures, there's going to be an air monitoring plan in place, continuous air monitoring that will provide data, and we'll be able to share that data with you all. Not necessarily in real time, because what happens is, so for instance, today is Wednesday, so we'll have monitoring, air monitoring in place, and that data will be collected, and then it gets sent out to a lab to be analyzed, and then we'll get those results back and share it. And if there's any concerns, because not only there'll be monitors in place that are like permanent, affixed monitors that are taking these readings in real time, but we're also going to have handheld monitors on our personnel so that they're taking real-time monitors while they're doing the work, so that they're not, our people aren't exposed to any, toxins or contaminants or asbestos, silica, things of that nature, and elevated levels that could be harmful. So those don't produce data, but they take real-time measures to send out alerts so that we know to stop work and take a look at what's going on. With regard to your specific building and anything that it may bring to the table as far as asbestos or, old infrastructure, when we get into the ground there, we are, as I say, coordinating with your facilities folks to make sure that we are trying to document everything that we might find as we progress. But we're also going to look to get access agreements with your buildings, all of the buildings proximate to Second Avenue, so that we could put in noise and vibration monitors, tilt monitors, so that, any of the work that we're doing, if there's any settlement, if there's adverse vibration, fortunately your buildings are a little bit newer, but some of the buildings here are 100 years old and built on rubble foundations. They may not be able to withstand the construction that's going on around them. And in those instances, we're going to want to know if we're negatively impacting those buildings, or if we have to shore those buildings up before we get in there to do the work, so that they can withstand the work. So again, there is a lot of interaction with the buildings. And if you're not involved in it, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be sure to, let you know what's going on. For instance, I reached out earlier this month to Jack Lipper, who is counsel for Franklin Plaza, for ownership, to start setting up a series of these meetings, because then we're going to want to meet with the tenant board and the tenant association and the tenants at large. Once we get a contractor on board and we can talk about phasing and timeline, we're going to want to meet with you all to, give you a detailed breakdown of what's going to be going on right outside your windows.
Okay, question on, question I want to follow up. We have the Children's Aid Society development that's going on at 101 between right on the corner of Lex. And they went ahead and did, as a preventative measure, tested for asbestos. Will you be doing that around the sites of Franklin Plaza and the others?
Anywhere that there's known asbestos, or if we're getting into the utilities and they're potentially wrapped or insulated in asbestos and we find that, then yeah, we would, we're going to test for that before we disrupt it. And then there'll be, dedicated containment and, authorized asbestos removal measures that are, there's a state mandated process on how to remove and abate asbestos, which we would be required to follow.
Great, thank you. Jose?
How's the MTA gonna handle any damage to buildings as you're doing the construction? There's a lot of questions from owners. I'm on 116 myself, a little more in the middle, but a lot of the owners that I know that on Second Avenue have a lot of concerns regarding the tunneling and everything. How will it work if you guys are causing damage to the building? What's the process that will be in place for that kind of damage?
So for the tunneling aspect of it, from say 116 north, where we're doing the tunnel boring machine, that's going to be going on 80 to 100 feet below the surface. So there really isn't a lot of impact at the street level. In most instances, folks aren't even going to know that it's going on. It's going to be passing below their feet, literally, but 100 feet down, 80 feet down. So they're not even going to be aware. But again, we're going to be putting those monitors up in all along the alignment, so that if anything does happen, or if it's on the verge of happening, we're aware of it before it gets to that point. We do have, and I imagine I'll double check, because obviously we don't have a contract in place yet, but I imagine certainly for phase one and for other mega projects, we have an OSIP program, which is owner controlled insurance plan. So we self-insure, and if the contractor then goes ahead and, even something as seemingly minor as backs a truck up into an awning of a building, the contractor is going to be required to replace that awning in kind. And obviously, if there's any damage, structural damage to a building based on our work, to facades or to the interiors of a building, cracking or, floors, things of that nature, then we'll repair that. There's a very extensive and detailed pre-construction sort of survey process that goes on, that we go in and take copious notes and photos with all of the building owners to make sure that any pre-existing conditions are documented. If there's a crack in a building that we're going to be working proximate to, and that crack is 1 inch wide now, we'll know in 3 years if it's 4 inches wide, that we impacted that. May not be to the point where there was structural damage and we needed to stop work, but it is something we're going to have to repair or take ownership of. So there will be pre-construction surveys done as well as post-construction surveys to match up what the conditions look like after work to what they were before we got there.
Follow up.
A little follow-up question. Thank you for that. That was a great answer. We know that in phase one, below 96, there was substantial issues with rodents. As you were tunneling, even though they're 100 feet up, like it was substantial, came up, they filled the houses, the streets, the buildings. Is there a better plan now from what you learned?
Yeah.
In order to mitigate that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we learned, obviously, popular misconception with folks is that the construction creates rats, but rats live in the soft earth that we're going to be disturbing, right? So while we're not creating those rats, we're forcing them out of their homes and to other areas. Sometimes they go and they go to food sources, right? So they go into restaurants and buildings and folks' private homes. So taking lessons learned from phase one, we've already met with the city's Mayor Adams's new rat czar. And we're going to be doing site walks even before we put a shovel in the ground to understand what the existing conditions are there. They've got a host of data about the existing conditions for what we call vectors, because it goes beyond rats, it's mice and other vermin and insects and so on. So it's a vector mitigation plan that we're working with the city, not only with the rat czar, but the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. One of the things that was helpful in phase one that we didn't start till probably halfway through the project was we worked with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to do these rat academies, where the Department of Health comes out and explains to folks, steps that they can take too, if they see increased rat activity. We're allowed to bait inside our work zones and around our work zones, to a certain radius, but then we'll work with the Department of Health and then the city to, if we see an increase in activity, we'll get the city involved so that they can take steps, to go beyond what we're allowed to do. But again, we're doing that early. We're going to do that before a shovel goes in the ground so that we can sort of document what the existing conditions are there. So we have a good baseline moving forward. I don't think that was done proactively enough as part of phase one.
Thank you. We'll get Beverly and then back to Leslie. Beverly?
Yes, thank you, Joseph, for the presentation. Great information. I have like 3 questions. The first one, can you explain what cut and cover is? The second is, will there be any access to the 4, 5, and 6 at 116 and 110th Street? And the last question is, in regarding to the design that you have for 125th Street, I see that the turnstiles are on the outside at street level. Do y'all have any concerns about a lot of money being lost because of people just jumping over the train style, at that level?
Yeah.
So much access to the street.
Sure. No, it's a great point, and I'll work backwards from that. I mean, it is a conceptual rendering. We're talking probably in the neighborhood of 8 years between when we put shovel in the ground and when we start running service. So we anticipate, the fare array and the, fare theft deterrent systems to probably be considerably improved between now and then. So whatever the existing, the most modern theft, fare evasion deterrent system is that we have utilized in the system, that'll all be incorporated there. So I don't want to get too hung up necessarily on, the turnstile thing, because that could very well change over the next several years based on advancements in technology. But we will certainly keep an eye on that. And it's a great point about being that close to the street level and to the sidewalk. If, it's a lot easier for folks to sort of jump from there if they don't have to go internally and then make an effort, and folks see them. With regard to your other questions, there was, what was it? Sorry.
116th Street is no access to the 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, no. So 106 and 116, you won't be able to directly access the 4, 5, 6. Obviously, you could back ride up to 125th Street and then, transfer there. It'd be a free transfer. But there will not be tunnels that go west to Lexington Avenue from each of those stations. And then the other question, I think, if I recall correctly, was what is cut and cover? And essentially what that is because of where we are having to connect to the higher elevation, which is closer to the surface, we're going to start digging from the top down. And then as we get lower, what we'll do is we'll move the equipment into the areas that we've already excavated and then plate them over with metal plates and decking so that we can work underground with traffic and pedestrians. They can continue to walk over us. So at 116 and 125th Street, we're going to be on, 60 feet to 100 feet underground already, and then working up to the surface. At 106 for cut and cover, we're going to be at the surface working down.
Thank you.
Leslie, question?
On 106th Street, you said you had the blueprints of the local area.
Yeah,
Franklin Plaza, I think one of the property managers does have the original blueprint, and on 107th Street, there is a stream that goes from the East River to the reservoir. We've had sinkholes, we've had 3 sinkholes since my existence of living there. In front of my building on 2086, in front of 2080, in front of 2075 where the liquor store is at. We had to dig out for the heating. That's why we changed from the oil to gas, and we had the gas plant separated from the west side of Franklin Plaza to the east side of Franklin Plaza. That's why there's 2 gas plants. But there was a sinkhole there and it flooded every day, every night. So do you know about all the flooding that you're gonna inquire once you start
No.
digging?
so we're certainly aware of the stream that goes underneath. And our design team is aware of that and has made accommodations in their designs to, be able to work around that. I mean, frankly, our entire system and the biggest sort of enemy of the subway system in general is water, if you will. And unbeknownst to me, when I started working with the MTA, I started as a consultant in 2012 before coming inside in 2015 and working directly for the MTA, but that's neither here nor there. But my misconception was when I came uptown from 63rd Street Station to 72nd, 86th, and 96th, I had the misconception that while I was going up, I was also going up in elevation, when in fact 96th to like 106th is one of the more low-lying areas of the city. So all of our new stations are going to be built with 500-year flood plans in place. Not only do we take into consideration the federal guidelines for 500-year floods, but then we go +3 or +5 to make sure that our stations are minimally impacted by this flooding. So not only are we doing that, we're building that into the design, but we are aware of the underground stream, the aquifer there.
Are you also aware of any potential flooding as, like what happened in Superstorm Sandy?
Yeah.
I mean, the water level came up to First Avenue.
Yeah, that's what I mean when we talk about those 500-year floods. They granted seem to be happening every 5 years, 5 months. It seems like sometimes when we get a lot of bad rain or snow. But these severe weather events are happening a lot more frequently than what they had originally predicted, or to be these 500-year catastrophic type of weather events. So we are building to be able to withstand those type of events.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, just to follow up, because that was a great question. We're having a lot of conversations with the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, and specifically looking at the 106th Street corridor as a potential future area. They're gonna, they're actively applying for grants to, do the I guess schematic design of that, what that would look like. It's not, wouldn't be funded to construction, but it's something to think about as you're considering the flood risks in the neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, much like we have this task force now, and we've gotten this task force going early, we'll have an interagency task force with all of our different agency partners on this project. As we get ready to get this project going, we'll convene that before we put shovels in the ground, so that we have the key folks there, not only to talk about things that we're doing, things that they're planning to do, so that we're integrating that choreography that needs to be done so that we don't butt heads with one another. But also, what we did in phase 1 is we took walks with these folks so that they could get a real firsthand idea of, what we were doing, was the mitigation measures or, the considerations that we were taking for their systems. Was it sufficient? Should we be doing something differently? And letting them, just like we're having a two-way dialogue, having two-way dialogues with them to make sure that we're doing, the best that we possibly can, not only by the neighbors in the neighborhood, but also by our agency partners.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, Joe, I'm gonna transition us, and if you would be so kind as to stay on. We're just gonna get a brief update from Leslie, who's from Franklin Plaza. Maybe you'd be so kind as opine if on certain issues or questions
Sure.
that may arise. So that the whole committee is aware, just again, talking about this, they're one of our more significant stakeholders in the community. And we appreciate your efforts in leaning in and wanting, engaging with their council and just making sure that everyone is taken care of over there. Obviously, a lot of elderly folks, those with disabilities, as you know, we appreciate the sentiment for the trees as well, because Borough President Mark Levine is, when he and I first met, he said, I'm dead serious about improving the treescape in this area for the health and quality of life, so we appreciate those efforts. So, I mean, Leslie, would you be kind enough to give us a brief update of what was relayed to you from the last communications with the board?
So they were all explained to us about the negotiations that Mr. Lepper and MTA was speaking of, and the contracts that are going forward. We're all for the 106th Street entrance, however, what was it, the rendering?
Yeah,
The way it looks there, you're blocking off the entrance to one of the buildings there. The building that exits on 106th Street, right in front of where the entrance is at. So we didn't think it was gonna be that way. We thought it was gonna be facing the one like on 96th Street that is facing uptown.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the way,
again, it's conceptual and you may not be able to tell depth there, but we're gonna be putting in a bump out and increasing the sidewalk there, so it's actually further out than what the existing plaza is now. So, we would definitely be mindful so as not to block any emergent, certainly any entrance or egress, but certainly anything that could be, buildings have to have so many points of entrance and egress to be within code. So DOB would definitely, frown upon us blocking any entrance or egress. But I'll confirm, there's got to be a sort of a schematic or a blueprint drawing of this that I can take a look at or even share with y'all to show you where it goes relative to the Franklin Plaza property line and any entrances or means of egress for the building. But I'll definitely look into that.
right, we're also looking into a capital improvement, and we're looking to gate off Franklin Plaza to make it a gated community. And that's gonna impact a lot of the egress and access once the construction starts as well.
Do you know the timeline for that work?
The money hasn't been granted to the plaza as of yet.
Okay. Yeah, because we'll definitely want to make sure that, again, we don't want to get in your way. We don't want to be doing anything that, would preclude you from making any capital improvements to your facilities and your structure. So we definitely want to make sure that we're in lockstep with the choreography there so that if we need to resequence some of our work or do something differently to make sure that we're not negatively impacting your ability to move your work forward, then we can do that. I know, Leslie, we've met a few times, whether it was at, I think it was definitely once at the EDPL meeting that we had or a previous meeting in person. I know or you know what it might have been? It was, might have been Espaillat's task force as well too. But if you don't already have my email, it's in this presentation. I can also drop it in the chat if it's helpful. Just make sure that we're connected so that we can, if there's certain folks you think we need to touch base with to make sure that things are, choreographed properly, that we're connecting with the right folks. I don't want things to get lost at the legal level, if you will, when you and I are working at the street level, right?
Exactly. Also, you had said that it was only 6 parking spots. I got from the board meeting that there was 20 that were gonna be taken.
I definitely, again, I'll confirm, don't quote me on the 6. I don't believe it was 20. I feel like it was more like, if it creeped into double digits, it was only 10 or 12, but I know the design, kept being tweaked to try to minimize the amount of parking spots that we were going to take, but I'll confirm that number. I'm fairly confident it was not 20 though. It might have started out at 20, but because of all the significant pushback and the limited amount of space that we would have, elsewhere on Franklin Plaza property or in the surrounding area to relocate spots, it probably got to the point where we're like, there's nowhere to put 20 additional spots. So we've got to, sharpen our pencils and come up with a better design that doesn't take as many spots. So I'll confirm what that final number is, but I'm fairly confident it was not 20.
Okay.
Now, Right, and then I'll go to you, but now, and I heard earlier in the presentation, Joe, and I appreciate the extension to say we need, you're dealing with this on the street level. So that the legalese can actually iron it all out for us, so that's really helpful in having that partnership, so. I'll get you and Leslie connected as well as all of the members here of the task force. Did I hear correctly in that the commitment with the parking that they're going to lose, that you're gonna try to find a way to add that back into the Franklin Plaza development?
Yeah, yep.
That correctly, okay.
Yeah, so our designers were working with the Franklin Plaza folks, they took site walks. There's some space on, probably closer to 106 behind the buildings over there that they thought they could put some spas. I mean, they're ongoing. They have not landed on a solution, but I know those conversations have been taking place.
Okay, great. Beverly and then Nelson.
Yes, you made, reference to, how, at 106th Street, as Leslie was speaking, is going, east to west. Is that the entrance that's gonna go, like, and that you might be bumping out the street to be wider? Would that be, any concerns for the traffic?
No, so this would all be DOT approved and authorized, and DOT would be involved in the design. So it's a similar. I was trying to think of the word, similar bump out to what you would see in other areas where they've increased the sidewalk radius around this area to make sure that we have not only navigable areas for pedestrians, but also folks with ADA needs, whether it's walkers or wheelchairs and things of that nature. So I can get the dimensions of what the bump out is going to be. But no, there is no perceived impact to the traffic flow there.
Nelson?
Hi, Joe. I just have two questions. In terms of the rendering for the 106th Street, Second Avenue station. Rendering, the background that it shows, is that a generic background? Because I live in that area and that doesn't remind me of the Franklin Plaza.
Yeah, I think it was a conceptual rendering. Again, it was, they probably just took any old brick building and put brick in the background, but I'll look at it a little bit more closely. I mean, they try to get it close, but again, they also expanded that plaza area, so the buildings are set back a little bit further. So they may have just popped anything, frankly, in there. I don't know what sort of stock imagery they have, but it isn't a actual sort of snapshot of that area.
Yeah, because I think it would be helpful if wherever possible with these renderings, if they actually try to stick to what it actually looks like wherever possible, because I think that will help both you with the community, with Franklin Plaza, people to envision, as well as for us to envision potentially what it could look like. Like right now, I'm still having a little bit of difficulty trying to envision that station. Also, you mentioned trees and the tree protection. I know from construction, if you damage one tree, you have to plant a significant number. I don't know if there's some kind of a waiver or something in my area, because Franklin Plaza doesn't have a lot of space for new tree plantings. So I'm just wondering if when you're talking about the parking, right, and finding substitute parking spots, has there been discussion in the event that there is tree damage, where potentially trees might be planted to help mitigate that damage?
Yeah, so the way it works is, and we typically model the MOU or the memorandum of understanding, and that's still all ongoing with Franklin Plaza. Nothing's been finalized yet. But we model it after agreements that we have with departments of parks and recreation. They have a formula that they take the caliper of the tree or the circumference of the tree, which gives it a sense, depending on the species of the tree, how mature of a tree that is. And obviously an older, more mature tree is a lot more valuable and a lot more of a sort of sentimental, certainly, and probably environmental benefit to the community, because it's a mature tree, provides more shade, converts more carbon dioxide into oxygen, etc. So we couldn't just simply take a sapling and say, here's a tree that we're replacing a 20-year-old, 30-year-old mature tree. So there's a formula that based on the caliper or the circumference of that tree, how many smaller circumference trees need to be provided for in order to make up for the loss of that one tree. Or there's financial compensation. There's a dollar value that gets associated. So if it's determined that one tree, two tree, three trees are ultimately impacted so that the vitality of those trees is so negatively impacted that they fail to thrive or they are dying and are not going to recover, then there will be restitution spelled out in that memorandum of understanding with Franklin Plaza as to, here, we're going to give you X amount of trees, which will be planted wherever, they see fit or wherever is feasible to be, or there will be a dollar amount that will be provided in compensation for the loss of those trees. Again, nothing has been finalized, so I don't have anything to share in way of what that agreement looks like, but those are the ways that they make an impacted party whole for a loss of something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Just looking at here in the Google map view, you can see there are two fairly mature trees right there on that corner of 106. So yeah, definitely thank you for explaining that. I think one last question I'm going to take is that with this on 106th Street, that ancillary structure that you're going to use north, could that potentially be used as a secondary entrance instead of on 108? Because you see that in some of the older lines where it's just like
Yeah. So
they
all of the ancillary structures will be emergency points of entrance and egress. So for emergency personnel to get into or folks to be brought out if another entrance is compromised for whatever reason. So they will have those abilities, but using them as a day in and day out entrance, I don't know that the ground level is configured in a way that it could put in, the Faraday systems and the essential elements that make it a functioning day in and day out entrance. Obviously, those things could be put up on another floor so that you free up the ground floor. But then again, that requires either greater height or depth or width. But let me double check. I'll get an understanding of why those ancillary structures are in this particular instance to avoid the conflicts with Franklin Plaza's parking lot, why that northernmost ancillary couldn't also double as an entrance.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because when I was fresh out of college, I was down back on John and Gold, and they have a couple of those tertiary entrances that are just random, like you're walking like right through a door and you're there down some stairs and you're
Well, I
in.
mean,
So
even at 72nd Street, the northern entrance at 72nd Street as part of phase 1 is a combined entrance and ancillary structure there. So, let me find out.
okay, great. Any other questions, committee?
Yeah, when is the tour?
When can we arrange a tour, Joe?
Well, it's not very pleasant down there. It's pretty similar to the ambient temperature above ground. So I don't know that this time of year is the best time to go down there. But let me see if we can't squeeze something in before the end of the year. I know we've gotten a lot of asks, especially from elected officials. So, if we could do a stakeholder tour, let me see if I can't get that set up. And if not, then certainly as weather gets a little bit better in the spring.
Doubt you're gonna be able to get all the electeds in.
Yeah, we've been doing it with them, but if you can, make it so. All right, thank you, Joe. I think we've covered everything in tonight's agenda. If there are any follow-up questions, we'll connect everyone on the task force so they have your email. Thank you so much
Appreciate
for
it.
asking a lot of these, questions that have come to light. And we're pleased that we got the funding. So that's the major step, multi-generational.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. And I'm sure I speak with Community Board 11 on a pretty regular basis, so I'm sure I'll speak to you before the holidays, but have a happy and healthy holiday, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. All right, any old business? Any new business? With that, we seeing that there is none for either, we will call the roll. Jose Altamirano. Leslie Colon.
President.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
David Giordano. Not here. Excuse. Giselle Malave. Excuse. Jennifer Meyer. Excuse. Nilsa Rama.
Present.
Beverly Pavon.
Present.
Claudia Perez. Cesar Santiago is here. Andy Beats Vasquez. All right. That we are adjourned.
It's a good day in here.
Yes, it is perfect.
I told you.
Because he said he had a quorum, he's like, we don't wanna come.